We have a massive update to go over today as Elliot Friedman has just revealed a huge Leafs update on their future surrounding Mitch Marner. And folks, this is not what many people expected. We're going to break down exactly what the report is and discuss how things have taken quite the interesting turn in this regard. We also have a bunch of other updates ahead of what's going to be a crazy next few days, next few weeks. The draft now is just days away, but before you can do it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. You guys have been absolute beasts with the support. 71% of you are watching right now aren't subscribed. We had a fantastic live stream just a few hours ago, so thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll be going live following, during free agency and, of course, every single Tuesday going forward. Darius, this is going to be crazy now because a new report is dropped, and not just one report. We're talking multiple reports here surrounding Mitch Marner and not only his future in Toronto, but a plan regarding a trade that is quite the interesting turn of events, and it all centers around Elliot Friedman. And it started yesterday when Elliot Friedman said, late last night on the Friedman podcast, 32 Thoughts rather, Friedman says teams are waiting to see Vegas's offer to Marner. I think there's a lot of people just wondering, is Vegas the team to beat here? So this started with Elliot Friedman. It had us pondering, okay, the way Elliot Friedman talks, he always says these things before stuff happens. So okay, linking Vegas to Marner. And then there's been some more rumblings about, you can see here, there's an expectation that Vegas will be viewed and should be viewed as the favorites. I will say in the course of my daily conversations, the feeling is that Vegas should be seen as the favorite. So Darius, this was from Chris Johnston. A lot of craziness is going on right now. And then, of course, there was the big report about a sign and trade from Nick Kypreos, which is extremely intriguing to me because you pair all these reports together. You can see here from Nick Kypreos, so most of the attention on Mitch Marner revolves around his free agency status. A sign and trade can't be ignored. Also, there's a million more reports we're going to dive into this video, so you want to stay tuned to the end. But Darius, I'll stop my rant. There is a ton to go over here. Reports from Friedman, Chris Johnston, basically saying that Vegas is the favorites. Two independent reporters all clued up with just moments ago, about an hour or so ago, is the time of recording. Maybe a bit earlier than that, longer than that. Mitch Marner is still open to a sign and trade to Vegas.
Yeah, and Nick Kypreos isn't saying that it is definitely going to happen, but I think it's very interesting, and I'll touch on that in a second. But to go back to the, Vegas being the odds-on favorite thing, Elliot Friedman, credit where credit's due. He's been saying Vegas for a long time at this point. Since the Leafs were eliminated from the playoffs, Vegas has been very high on his list, I guess. Not that that matters, but obviously, he's been saying Vegas a lot. The Golden Knights have been near the top the entire time. Every time that he's released a list of teams that Marner would be interested in going to, Vegas has been near the top. So credit where credit's due. Again, I think Vegas probably at this point is the favorite. They're a competitive team that could probably make it work, and we'll get to that in a second as well. And obviously, probably not a bad place to live. And on top of it, again, the no tax thing, it is a thing that plays into players' decisions. A lot of reporters, insiders, the commissioner of the league are saying that it doesn't matter. It does. It does. There's agents that have come out and said that, there are some loopholes, like Alan Walsh has come out on Agent Provocateur and said that, there are some loopholes for people living in Canada to get around that, some of the players to get around that, but you're still not making as much as if you were going to make in Vegas, of course. So obviously it plays into it. Jonathan Marchessault has come out recently and said that if he's to be moved, he wants to go to somewhere like Nashville for the same reason. So it plays a factor into these decisions. So I could see Vegas being the favorite. Now, a sign and trade not being off the table, I think is very interesting. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. And obviously, if you look at Vegas, they have to shed some cap. There's no way they're going to sign Marner for the dollar amount that he wants with their current cap situation. So a sign and trade could be interesting. We know that last year there was a sign and trade in place, or not a sign and trade, excuse me. There was a swap in place for Shea Theodore. That kind of fell through. Then William Karlsson was a name that popped up as well. There's some weird no movement clauses, no trade clauses going on with the Vegas Golden Knights, and Thomas Hertl as well as another name that has popped up. Karlsson, if he was open to coming to the Toronto Maple Leafs, makes a ton of sense in terms of a sign and trade. I think that would be great for both teams because obviously Vegas then gets to sign Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs get a center back. And we don't know what's happening with John Tavares at this point. So it could make a ton of sense. And I think it's interesting that in this situation, it would be considered tampering. But I wonder if Vegas goes, listen, we want to sign you. We know that you want to come here. Help the Leafs out. We can shed some cap through a move like this. You end up coming here. We'll have your rights. We can sign you earlier as well. Get it done. So I think it could be very interesting.
Yeah, Nick Kypreos, I didn't cover the full report here. Take Vegas and Karlsson, for example, landing number two center is just as much a priority for Toronto as it is, of course, finding a top winger to replace Marner. So not only are you at the point where you're getting linked to Karlsson, but now it's, of course, if a trade and sign and trade is to happen, it's very real. And kind of to touch back here to the Chris Johnson report, he basically goes on to say what his next contract could look like. In a place like Dallas, it's hard to see him making more than 10 to 10.5, but of course, the biggest payday, he could be 12.5 to $13 million. So I think at this point it's very real. It's almost inevitable that he leaves. It's just a matter of whether it's going to be, to Vegas, which would be ideal for the Leafs if they can get a sign and trade done. How much does Mitch Marner value that extra year of control that he can get if he signs first with Toronto, then gets traded to Vegas? There's of course all of that, and you mentioned it. I mean, Freeman's been on it for a while about watching Vegas. We know Carolina is going all in as well, but Vegas seems to be the number one priority here. And you could see some more insight. A lot of insight came out surrounding the situation. Part of what's driving Marner's thinking right now is he's probably had enough of the noise. He's played under a huge spotlight in Toronto with tons of scrutiny. He also just started a new chapter in life. Of course, he had a wife and kids, and that may have influenced his view, obviously his baby, where he wants to be going forward. If you're in that mindset, you have to look for a quieter place to continue your career. And there are teams that fit that bill. Now, is Vegas quieter? Hockey wise, yeah. Now, as a city, of course, it's pretty poppin' city, but I think it makes a lot of sense. There's also some rumblings. Now, this is less substantiated. There's been some rumblings on Twitter about him looking at houses within Vegas, and people saw him shopping for houses, of course, for his family. I mean, Marner is a beast. He's an animal, but he doesn't perform in the playoffs. So I think it's fine for the Leafs if he leaves, but at the same time, like, they have to find ways to replace him. And also something else that's kind of to note here, I think it takes a lot of the sting off of the fan base in general from the optics point of view of the front office if you get a player back immediately for Mitch Marner rather than just letting him walk, because they tried to trade him, didn't work. Now in a sign and trade, at least it seems then you didn't just completely mishandle the situation, which they realistically definitely did.
Yeah, and I think that is a good point, right? If you get a player, some type of asset back in return, it stings a little bit less. It's going to sting regardless, because again, Mitch Marner is a great player. There was so much promise back in 2016 of what this Toronto Maple Leafs team was going to do. And around 2021, you could tell that it wasn't going to work out. And the fact that we got to 2025 at this point is absolutely ridiculous. And some people, paid for it with their jobs, but a little bit too late, I think. But again, Mitch Marner was a great player, like you said, but didn't perform in the playoffs. And I think it's more about restructuring how the Leafs look and operate as a team and the philosophy of the team as well heading into next season. And I think that if this were to happen, the sign and trade, and you get a Karlsson back, then the sting of losing John Tavares, which is a possibility as well, we'll cover that in another video, would be less as well, because the Karlsson could come in, play second line center. He has the foot speed. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's not the biggest player, but I like guys who've won the Stanley Cup recently. I do, because they know how to get it done, right? So I think that it would be a really good move. And again, his point totals for how little he played, again, he's been dealing with injuries and stuff like that, but has been pretty good throughout his career. And his point totals last year, again, he missed some time, but not bad whatsoever. So could be a really good move for the Leafs, despite, even if it's not a sign and trade, to still go out and try and get a guy like William Karlsson. It could make a lot of sense for the team. So even a hurdle could make some sense. I think Karlsson fits the team better, but again, they have to restructure this team. And it's not about replacing Mitch Marner at this point. It's about building a better team, which they should have done years ago at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening. But from Nick Kypreos, it sounds like a sign and trade isn't necessarily off the table. And I wonder, from Vegas's point of view, if they're like, listen, let's get this done. We want you. We know that you want to sign here. This is your preferred choice. We need to shed some cap, help the Leafs out a little bit in this way, so then we can at least sign you.
Yeah. Tons of craziness going on. And again, we're going to keep you up to date as the situation is fluid. The first domino is yet to fall for the Leafs. Trades across the NHL are starting to happen slowly but surely. Trevor Zegras, rather, and other things like that. So we'll keep you up to date. Let us know down below where you want him to go and what your thoughts are on the Karlsson for Marner swap. Cheers.